Well, good morning, y'all. We are continuing in our series called Revival, and I will remind you that a revival, as it's defined, is a Christian meeting to bring people back to Jesus and or strengthen their faith. Now, this gets back to my roots. Like, with the church that I grew up in, we did revivals every year. So we're brushing off the old hymns. We're bringing out the revival passages of Scripture that scare the crap out of people. And, we're singing some of that old Southern, come on, and some of that Southern gospel stuff. So we hope you'll enjoy the next few weeks. And the whole point, though, is that, all of us, we could use a little help to get our spiritual vitality back, because a lot of us have become distracted and rough, chasing the wrong stuff, and we really, in our heart, really want to live all out for Jesus. So we just need to get back to the basics sometime. And there was a few weeks ago where I was sitting out on our back porch in Nicaragua, and I was with Stu, who is our boots on the ground guy for Nika Angels, and we were out there having a glass of wine, enjoying the evening, looking up at the stars, and all of a sudden, I see this flying at us, and I go, what the heck is that? And both of us are freaking out, and it was crazy. I thought the world was coming to an end. I thought the rapture had occurred, and like old Charlie, me and Stu, we'd been left behind. Turns out it was just Elon Musk. This is his latest little thing, the train of satellites that he's created to create Wi-Fi for the entire world. But, there are just some times when we're kind of going through life, and all of a sudden, something happens that reminds us there really is something more. There's something out there that is bigger than all of this. That this whole thing, all that we know and that we love and that we are comfortable with in this world, will one day come to an end. The Apostle Paul says in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, listen, I tell you a mystery. We will not all die, but we will all be changed in a flash, in the twinkling of an eye. The last trumpet will sound, and the dead will be raised from their graves, and we will all be changed. We'll step out of our mortal clothes, and we will slide into immortal bodies and enter into eternal life. And then death will be conquered. Where, O death, is your victory? Where, O death, is your sting? But thanks be to God, because he gives us the ability to overcome death through our Lord Jesus Christ. Therefore, my dear brothers and sisters, stand firm. Stand firm and let nothing move you. Always give yourselves fully to the work of God, because you know whatever you do for God will never, ever be a waste of time. It's passages like this that remind us that life is short. So we got to stop messing around. I'll get you on up for Time Change Sunday. Just a few weeks before my dad died, I had a conversation with my dad's wife that was really sobering for me. My dad was 87 at the time, and his wife, Juanita, he and Juanita were married not too long after my mom died, and they had a beautiful relationship together. And my dad had a stroke, and it paralyzed him from the waist down. He lost his ability to swallow, and so they had to do the feeding tube and the whole shot. And he was getting released from the hospital in a few days, and it forced our family into this big decision about what we're going to do next, which I hate those moments. And the doctor just said, look, he's going to have to go into a facility. And I vowed I'd never put my parents in a facility, but never say never. And so we found this assisted living home that we chose not only because it was a Christian-based home, but also because it had apartments adjacent to it where Juanita could walk down and see Dad anytime she wanted without leaving the building. And so we were at the hospital one of the last times before he was released, and all of a sudden it occurred to me, like our family had made this decision about all of that, but hadn't included Juanita in it. Like she got brushed aside through the whole thing. And I was embarrassed about it. I said, gosh, I'm really sorry. And I realized that she'd never seen the facility before. And so Shelby and I took her down that day, and we toured the place, and we decided we were going to help her pick out an apartment and whatnot. And when she walks in, it becomes really apparent from the very first moment that people are different than what she is. There are people who are incapacitated, people in wheelchairs, and people who are pretty out of it. She's this kind of really still very strong, independent woman. She's been caring for my dad for the last few years. And I just hear her say under her breath, just loud enough that I can hear it, she says, "This is a nightmare." And as we begin to walk through the facility, she somehow convinces herself that this is homey and comfortable, and she would be honored to live in this place and this apartment, hoping that one day that my dad could get strong enough to move in with her in the apartment side of the complex, which never happened. But she was able to somehow find the strength to accept her new normal. And as we were leaving, I'll never forget it, she says, "I now know what the Bible means when it says in the twinkling of an eye." She said, Bob and I were just standing in the bathroom together, joking around, having a fun morning, 1 minute, and then the next minute he gets hit by this stroke, and it changes our life forever. And she said, this is where I have to walk by faith. She said, "I can't believe that everything changed so quickly." I have to tell you, in that moment, it just hit me like a ton of bricks. Most of us go through life pretty oblivious to what we know in the back of our heads is inevitable, of what the someday holds for us. And when that inevitable finally happens, it drops us to our knees, and it just wipes us out. And a lot of time, we are just not prepared for that moment. In a flash, in the twinkling of an eye, the last trumpet will sound. The dead will be raised from their graves, and we will all be changed. In the twinkling of an eye, change happens. And whether you're 87 or you're 27, it doesn't matter. The question is, will we be ready when it does? I think a lot of us, including myself, would rather be in denial about all of the stuff that can and eventually will happen because we're content to just live in denial and pretend like this will never happen to me. This is happening to somebody else, not me. But the Apostle Paul is reminding us here that there will come a day when everything that we have known and loved about this world, everything that we're comfortable with, everything that we have held on to will one day come to an end. And so we got to stop messing around and get serious. Many of us, we get so busy in life that we put off our faith until the someday of our lives. Right? Our relationship with God, we say we'll get serious about our relationship with God. Someday I'll get serious about it. Someday I'll make it a priority. But before we know it, that someday hits. And we're so unprepared for it. And by the time we realize it, it's too late. And so we got to stop messing around. And so having a proper view of the end, understanding what's out there at the end of the day, living with the knowledge of how fleeting life really is, will not only cause us to have a vision for what we're wasting our time on currently, but it will also cause us to evaluate and ask the question, what am I so invested in that it's taking up all of my time in this life right now? And am I invested in anything that will last beyond the grave? What am I giving my life for? And is it really worth it? When we truly get that in the scheme of eternity, our existence is no longer than just a blip on the screen, it changes our perspective and it causes us to live differently. One of my favorite pieces of research that was done not too long ago was a sociologist interviewed 50 people over the age of 95. And he asked them all the same question. If I had to do it over again, what would I do differently? And they all said the same three things, basically. First of all, they said they would have reflected on their life more, spent more time evaluating their life so that they could understand where they were, if they were on the right path, and they could pivot and redirect if they felt they were off course. The second thing was that they would have risked more. They felt that they played it too safe in their lives. And the third one is that they would have done more to make a difference, to be part of something with a bigger sense of purpose or mission. I think those are three things that really should be at the forefront of our minds and drive us, because those are three things that we really put off, that get pushed aside in the daily grind. Because I think really deep down, I want to say that all of us are looking for meaning in our lives. We all want to be part of something bigger, something that we can invest our lives in that will last beyond our lifetime. But we don't all want to do what it takes in order to do that. And I don't know whether it's because we don't know how, or we don't want to do the work that it takes to figure it out, to figure out what we want to do and where we connect. I don't know if it's because we don't want to make the sacrifices that it takes in order to make that kind of radical commitment or to invest the time in it. I don't know. But I do know that most of us continue to push off investing our lives in things that have a sense of purpose and mission, and that someday of wanting to do something meaningful never, ever comes. And at the end of the day, that's not what pays the bills, right? And so we don't invest our time there, and we end up investing all of our time in the stuff that helps us to become financially secure and comfortable instead. And I think that's just it. Like, we get into this protectionist bunker mentality where we make a decision, whether conscious or unconscious, that we're going to do whatever it takes to take care of me and mine, and that's what our life becomes about. Just taking care of life. And so we hold on to and we fight for all the wrong stuff. All so that, what? We don't run out of money in case we live to the ripe old age of 95. A great example of this is Jesus tells a story about a guy in the Gospel of Luke chapter 12. And he said, the farm of a certain rich man produced a great crop. And he thought to himself, what can I do? My barn isn't big enough for this harvest. And then he said, here's what I'll do. I'll tear down my barns, and I'll build bigger ones. Then I'll gather my grain and my goods, and I'll say to myself, man, you have done well. You've got it made, and you can now retire. You have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy. Eat, drink, be merry. But just then, God shows up, and he says to him, you fool, this very night, you're going to die. And now who will get all that you have saved for yourself? That's really the crux of the issue that Jesus is laying out, isn't it? I mean, that storing up the wrong stuff for ourselves and not living our life for God. He ends up that passage by saying, this is how it'll be with anyone who stores up things for themselves, but is not rich towards God. He was invested in all the wrong stuff. He could have taken the money and leveraged it and made a difference in the world. He could have taken time off in his retirement and leveraged that time to go out and make a difference in people's lives. But instead, he had this protectionist bunker mentality where he spent his time building bigger barns to store more stuff so that he could accumulate more and make sure that his future was secure and comfortable. The problem was that when he finally made it, he died. And now all of that stuff was worth nothing to him in the end. That's a guy who was messing around, never got serious, always pushed everything off to the someday, and got caught unprepared. He thought that he had more time to enjoy all that he had created for himself. But in the twinkle of an eye, it all changed. Now, we can sit here and we can armchair quarterback that thing all day long. But the truth is, we do the same thing, don't we? I don't think any of us have any room to judge that guy. Instead of leveraging what we have to live all out for Jesus, we instead shrink back in our fear of losing what we have, and we hold on too tight to all the wrong stuff because of a fear of the future, of not having enough. It's a scarcity mentality. Jesus said in the Gospel of Matthew, do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth. Instead, invest in treasures that are in heaven, where moth and rust cannot destroy and corrode, and where thieves cannot break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. The greatest litmus test for figuring this out is just to open up our phone and to look at our calendars and to look at our schedule and go, okay, where am I the most heavily invested in my life? Where do I spend the most time? What are my priorities? I think the essence of what he's saying here is that it's all about what we are putting our faith in. I think a great example of this is that for decades, for a couple generations, we put our faith in the American dream to own our own home, right? For those of us who bought before the downturn, we thought we were making a great sound investment. We watched every year as home prices went up and up every year, and we thought this is great. You can't lose. And so our investment was supposed to be our nest egg as the values continued to rise. But what we couldn't even comprehend was the complete erosion of what all of us put our faith in, which was the U.S. economy. We thought it was too strong to fail. And in that moment, things changed. Our home values dropped like a lead balloon, and many of us became financially devastated and underwater. So now, 12-ish years or so later, values continue to creep back up. Things get good again. We forget how bad it was. We get our confidence back. And then all of a sudden, something like a coronavirus comes out of nowhere and tanks the stock market and starts depleting the value of some of the biggest companies in America. I'm just telling you that when we store up for ourselves the stuff of this world, it is all so fragile. It is a house of cards, and it will not last. And according to Jesus, we have a choice. We can either invest our lives in the stuff of this world where we know as sure as we need air to breathe that it will one day come to an end, or we can invest ourselves in the stuff of God, where the Bible teaches us that it will last forever. And Jesus says, you pick. Your choice. But whichever path you decide to go down, just go down eyes wide open, because you know how that story ends. You can be in denial about it, but you know at the end of the day where that leads. I remember trying to have a conversation with my dad just before he died about some financial issues and just trying to get his affairs in order. And he just looks at me and he goes, "Do you really think that any of that matters to me right now?" He says, "I don't care about any of that." He's like, "You pick. I don't care." And it just made me think, we spend our whole lives in financial planning that our goals for retirement, to, again, not run out of money as we get older. But what if we turned it all around? What if we started with the premise that whatever money we have on the day that we die is worth nothing? That everything that we have accumulated is meaningless for us on our deathbed? And what if we could start at that point and work our way back and say, okay, if that's true, then how does that change the way that I'm living? How does that change my priorities? How does that change what I'm working so hard to create in this world, to get to this point? What do I want that moment to be about? And for my dad, I have to tell you that he had such a strong faith that in that moment he was ready. He knew what his life was about the entire way, and when he walked out of this world and into the next, that was a moment he was ready for. I just think that every day we have to fight through the crap of the daily grind to try to keep a focus and a clarity about what's real and about what is meaningful, so that in this moment we can die with no regrets. How does that change your retirement plan? What does that look like for you? How does that fit into your calendar? When you peel away all the superficial layers of your life and you get down to the core of who you really are, what are you left with? What is at the heart of you? Of what makes you tick? That's why Jesus says, where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. Whatever you are invested in, wherever you spend your time, wherever you spend your money, that is where your heart is. That is who you are. That is what is driving you through this life. What are you holding on to so tightly that you're just so afraid to let go of? What are you investing your life in? In that 1 Corinthians passage we read earlier, the Apostle Paul, I love the way this passage ends. It says, therefore, my brothers and sisters, stand firm. Stand firm and let nothing move you. Always give yourselves fully to the work of God, because you know whatever you do for God, that is never in vain. That is never a waste of time, and it will be so worth it in the end. Paul says when we finally figure out what's real in this world, stop messing around, get real, and stand firm. Let nothing move you. Let nothing drive you back. I think this whole thing comes down to figuring out what we want our life to be about. Defining who we are. Where our faith becomes more than just a Sunday morning thing or a prayer before breakfast thing. It's building a faith that is a lifestyle. It's building a faith that is sustainable. It's building a faith that drives us in every decision that we make, every move that we take. That our faith is strong enough to carry us when life tries to distract us away. Stand firm. Invest your life in the stuff of God and let nothing move you. And if we can find the strength to do that, when that someday hits, and in a twinkling of an eye, your life changes, we have this promise that our faith will be what carries us through. It is something strong enough that we can hold on to that in those tired moments. And in that moment, we will know beyond a shadow of a doubt that what we invested our life in is so worth it. But in the meantime, we got to stop messing around.